way. And this brings us to an important article from our next guest, who argues that pride flags do not symbolize the will of the American people, but instead represent incredibly powerful political interests at home. The U.S. government isn't flying the pride flag because our majority Christian nation supports it. This is really about a network of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and other political actors here in America that want to radically reshape socially conservative countries into their own image. Joining us now to break it all down, which he writes about in this article for Human Events, is Dr. Shay Bradley Farrell, the president of the Counterpoint Institute. Dr. Shay, thanks for being here tonight.
Hi, Kara. Good to be back with you again.
Great. So in your piece, you talk about living in Central Europe these past few months. What impression does all this sex talk and politics, the pride flag, you name it, leave those people with in Europe, some of our allies, when they think about America now?
It pains me to say this, but we have become a laughingstock on the world stage when we are putting on drag queen shows in our military bases rather than focusing on protecting our national security. We certainly look humiliated, quite frankly, to not just countries in Central Europe, but also China, Africa, and many countries all around the world. So this article I wrote about was focusing on the pride flags that Secretary Blinken authorized to be flown around the world. The one that hit me the hardest probably was the one you said. We're flying one over the mission to the Holy See. But the problem is we're signaling a foreign policy, a position, a stance to these nations that, as you said, the majority of Americans do not agree with. But the majority of countries that we do this in, they find, and this is according to a research project done by Pew Research, they find homosexuality morally unacceptable. So whether you think it's morally unacceptable or not, we don't have any business putting in this in other countries. In my opinion, it tramples on their religious freedom. It tramples on their sovereignty. And, I have had very high-level government officials from different countries come to me and say, can you help us with this? This is not what we want in our countries. I've had religious leaders also from Africa, different people come and say, diplomats, how can you help us with this? Because your country is overstepping your bounds in our country. And because I did a lot of work at the United Nations during the Trump administration, a lot of times these people feel coerced and pressured into accepting our programs, like the one you just saw, in order to get funds from the United States.
And so when we see the pride flag flying all over, as you talk about in your article, is it also showing the power of NGOs? Because I feel like those are the real power behind many governments these days.
Absolutely. Let me start back here in America for a second. You know, the fabric of our society is being changed by these NGOs that you brought up. I give you as an example the Human Rights Campaign, which is in Washington, D.C. here. They're funded at least partly by George Soros and Open Society foundations. And as an example, one of the ways that they pressure is with this completely made up index called the Corporate Equality Index that has pushed Target and Nike and Budweiser into submission. You know, Fox News is even has written into their employees' handbooks that they offer transgender support and a workplace plan, and you can use whatever bathroom you want. You have to, or they encourage people to address others with the pronoun that they prefer. And incidentally, they have a perfect corporate equality index score. So this is happening in America, and these NGOs are also extremely powerful around the world, especially George Soros's organizations. They are the ones that are getting a lot of the money from our government under the Biden administration to push this stuff into other countries. You named a couple of programs, but there are many more programs. And Obama was spending millions, some told me billions on this. During the Trump administration, they were trying to differentiate between human rights programs and LGBT ideology programs and to roll those back from the Obama era. And they were having some success at it. But Biden has certainly reversed that. And I'll just end with this, Kara. I do believe the United States should be protecting the human rights of all people, including transgenders and homosexuals. And in some countries, homosexuals are oppressed and their human rights are trampled upon. I remember ISIS, of course, pushing off homosexual men off of buildings. These are the things we should be addressing. We should not be sending programs such as Obama did, called Purple Mice School, which taught children in developing world countries to accept transgenderism and that they could choose their own gender identity.
You know, it really is horrible. It's so sad when you talk about in your article as well, speaking to those in Hungary and elsewhere who lived through communist repression, and now they see it new birth here in the U.S. in the form of this leftist ideology. And as you're talking about, one gentleman came up to you with tears in his eyes saying, is there hope for America? And of course, you were saying that there is, but things look bleak now, but there definitely is. And I wish we had more time to speak tonight. But Dr. Shea, thank you so much for joining us tonight.